Ms Murphy has now taken her seat, and I welcome her to the Assembly and wish her every success. Mr Stewart Dickson has been given leave to make a statement on relations and solutions to the implementation of the protocol, which fulfils the criteria set out in Standing Order 24. If other members wish to be called, they should do so by rising in their places and continuing to do so. All members called will have up to 3 minutes to speak on the subject. I would remind members that interventions are not permitted, and I will take any points of order on this or any other matter until the item of business has been finished. And I call Mr Stewart Dickson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on an important issue which really failed to make any impact in terms of the discussion or media across the United Kingdom, or particularly here in Northern Ireland at the weekend, when one would have thought that when for probably the first time for any serious acknowledgement, the United Kingdom and the European Union reached a significant area of agreement and discussion between themselves in relation to the implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol, in that they agreed with one another to allow for a further extension of the grace period in relation to chilled meats and some other arrangements. Significant, Mr Speaker, because this is the first indication of a serious engagement between the two parties to allow and to recognise the difficulties that Northern Ireland finds itself in as a result of the outworkings of a protocol. But it might also be worth noting that we're in this situation because of the failure of those in Northern Ireland to recognise the damage that they were doing by supporting indeed our exit from the EU, but more importantly, from that point in time when the United Kingdom decided democratically to leave the European Union, a great deal of work has been done by certain political parties to put every single obstacle in the way of Northern Ireland's relationship with the EU and its relationship with the rest of the United Kingdom. Instead of working collaboratively and collectively together, working to deliver the very best outcome for Northern Ireland, there are those, and sadly represented in this chamber, who have been determined to highlight the difficulties and have done little or nothing, and indeed are in denial that there are incredible opportunities for Northern Ireland given our unique position in respect of our position both in the United Kingdom and in the European Union. That indeed has been further exacerbated, Mr Speaker, in respect of the legal action which was taken. And while I do not deny the right of any citizen or any political party or any grouping of political parties to take legal action to check or verify their perception of the law, it is very clear that their actions very much have the potential to weaken the union relationship in the United Kingdom rather than any way to defend the union position of the United Kingdom, Mr Speaker. The reality is that if they had, and these are people who voted for Brexit, these are people who knew right from 2015 what they were seeking to achieve. Now is the time to move away. Now is the time to move away from constitutional issues and to determine the business and better prospects and future for the citizens of Northern Ireland. And I welcome the statement of agreement between the EU and the United Kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you. And I call Christopher Stalford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Sir, I'll not be selling my birthright for any mess of European Union pottage, despite being invited so to do by the Alliance Party. This is not purely an economic issue, it is a constitutional issue, and the constitutional position of Northern Ireland has been fundamentally undermined and threatened by the protocol. It is ironic to be summoned here today to a discussion about the amendment of the implementation of the protocol by people who called for its rigorous implementation. Mr Dickson and his party all signed up to this joint position demanding the rigorous implementation of the protocol. Not a soft touch, not a light hand, but the rigorous implementation. And we have seen for ourselves what that has produced. We have seen situations where medical supplies have been threatened to the people of Northern Ireland. We have seen a situation where certain food products are being threatened and their supplies to the people of Northern Ireland. And therefore, those who signed up to the protocol, those who were scuttling around Brussels demanding the provisions of the protocol, should take ownership of it. The protocol is not as a consequence of Brexit. The protocol is as a consequence of a Remainer rearguard action to deny the outcome of the Brexit referendum in 2016. And they fought for it, they argued for it, they demanded it, and now they seek to tell their constituents that it wasn't really us, Gov. We didn't do it. No, it was all those evil people who campaigned to leave the European Union. Northern Ireland is being used as a political football by the European Union, and the European Union's cheerleaders in Northern Ireland should take ownership of that fact. They argued for the provisions of this protocol. The protocol doesn't need to be amended. The protocol needs to go, because it is impacting upon the lives of our people in a negative way, whether it's in terms of supplies or economic activity. The consequence of the protocol is to make people in Northern Ireland less well off by denying them their rights as United Kingdom citizens. And the European Union's cheerleaders, who fought to prevent the implementation of the Brexit referendum result and who cheered Brussels on every step of the way in this process, because they owe a higher fealty to the European Union than they do to their own constituents and the interests of their own constituents. We will not be lectured on doing what's right for the people of Northern Ireland by those who are actively campaigning to make them poorer. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And I call Ciamh Archibald.
Concordia, and good to see you back. Last week we saw the grace period in chilled meats extended until the end of September, which obviously provides welcome temporary relief for businesses. However, it's clear that we now need to see progress between now and then to put in place permanent solutions to provide the type of clarity and certainty and stability that businesses are telling us that they want and need. And the reality is, for all of the shouting and the protestations from unionist parties in this chamber and beyond, the protocol is a consequence of Brexit. The loudest opponents of the protocol, ironically, being the biggest champions of Brexit. A Brexit, of course, that was championed against the democratically expressed wishes of people here in the North. The majority of MLAs in this chamber, the majority of citizens and businesses opposed Brexit and wanted mitigations from its worst excesses. The protocol is that mitigation, and while imperfect, it does offer very real protections and also gives the North competitive economic advantages. Those who depend on the protocol protections for their livelihoods and business success want to see it maintained and working, and any operational problems resolved. That is why we need to use the period we now have to find longer-term solutions to the outstanding issues, and that will only be achieved through diplomatic and political engagement, through working together on the basis of good faith. Unhelpfully, however, we have British government representatives, including those involved in the negotiations, saying they didn't expect the protocol to be implemented in the way it is. In doing so, either they are exposing themselves as incompetent negotiators or they are disingenuously trying to mislead the public. The former is, of course, entirely possible, but it's much more likely that it's the latter that is the case, and they are being entirely dishonest. And of course, the position is entirely betrayed by the fact that if they honestly wanted to operate the protocol on an easier basis, they could seek a veterinary agreement with the EU. They said they don't intend to reduce standards, and a veterinary agreement which would minimise the checks required substantially, but they have refused completely to do that. What we have seen and heard from the EU is a willingness to engage through the structures that exist, that were agreed, of course, as part of the withdrawal agreement that was negotiated, ratified and signed up to by the British Government, to find solutions. And that work now needs to continue to find permanent solutions. Despite a lack of recognition from the British Government and unionist parties, there has been flexibility shown by the EU on a number of issues, as Mr Dickson outlined last week, including the removal of the obligation for green cards for car insurance and around medicines and pets. What we need is honesty from the British Government about what it signed up to and good faith engagement over the next number of weeks and months to provide a stable trading environment for our businesses where they can maximise the unique position that the protocol affords the North of continued access to the EU single market, and which allows the Executive and Invest NI to attract inward investment to create jobs and strengthen our economy.
Thank you, and I call Matthew O'Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of course, it's regrettable that we're here in the first place. It's regrettable that Brexit happened at all. It is somewhat or extremely bizarre to hear people argue that the protocol is somehow unrelated to Brexit. I'm afraid, for Mr. Stalford, the 70% of people in South Belfast who voted Remain, and probably many of the people who voted Leave, won't have chuntering from a sedentary position, I'm afraid, from the member, won't strengthen his position, which people in South Belfast know is absurd. But to go to the subject of the matter of the day, and I'm delighted that it was, raised. And I should just say, actually, the reason, since you drew my co-option to the Assembly, to the Assembly's attention, the reason I was co-opted, Mr. Stalford, is because your party was routed out of South Belfast because of its absurd position on Brexit, because of forcing through a hard Brexit against the wishes of people in South Belfast and all of Northern Ireland. So reflect on that the next time you chunter at me from a sedentary position. Okay, Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To move briefly on, if I could, to what we're actually discussing, which is the matter of the day, and I welcome the fact that it's been given. Last week, the European Commission and the UK did agree a significant package of easements. We should all be about making Brexit work. All of the consequences of Brexit, which includes the new bureaucracies that some businesses are dealing with as a result of the protocol. On chilled meats, the grace period was extended. On pets, a solution is close to being found in terms of moving pets from GB to Northern Ireland. On medicines, the European Commission has signalled a clear willingness to legislate in this area in order that we will have a comprehensive solution to this. So some of the scaremongering that has gone on is wrong. And on green cards, as has been mentioned by the previous speaker, because it is sometimes the case that we forget, or people are want to forget in this place, that the consequences of Brexit go far, far beyond the protocol. So it's welcome that in relation to green cards, people won't need a green card simply to travel to Donegal, or indeed for some people's constituents simply to drive a mile down the road to fill up their car with petrol. Now, leaving the single market and customs union, Mr. Speaker, was always going to have consequences. The protocol is an imperfect but necessary means of managing those. What we should all be about is making them work, seeking to find practical solutions to issues where they arise, and yes, taking advantage of the opportunities. For decades, for generations, this place has had very little genuine competitive advantage. We've all said it. Well, now we do. We have the opportunity to move goods to export seamlessly, unique on the planet, into the British market and also the European single market of 500 million people. Why would we deny our economy that? Yes, there are issues we need to make work, but this constant harping on the Constitution, this constant harping on identity anxiety is not the way to deliver prosperity and stability for our people. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I will conclude my remarks and say I welcome progress last week, and I just wish that other parties in this chamber would put their shoulder to the wheel, having created these problems in the first place, put their shoulder to the wheel and help deliver solutions.
Thank you. And I call Jim Allister.
Speaker, I suppose it is progress that the rigorous implementers of the protocol are now beginning to recognise the serious damage that their protocol is doing to Northern Ireland and their constituents, though they come with that subservient attitude still that we should be grateful to our overlords in Brussels that they have deigned to allow us to buy some sausages. Let me be very clear. This is an issue of sovereignty, not sausages. And mere tinkering with the protocol, grace periods, all the rest, do nothing to affect the obnoxious, pernicious substance of the protocol. And until that is gone, there is no solution. And the test of all the tinkering and all the grace periods and any changes is, does it still leave this supposed part of the United Kingdom within a foreign single market for goods, subject to a foreign customs code, a foreign VAT regime, all overseen by foreign laws adjudicated upon by a foreign court. And if any changes still do that, then it has not changed the substance of the protocol. And of course, the real consequence of that is that this assembly, this so-called legislative assembly, is prohibited by the protocol in legislating on much of what governs our economy. Much of what governs our economy are laws made now not in Belfast, not in London, but in a foreign jurisdiction. And yet those who proclaim themselves as Liberal Democrats are those cheerleading that fundamental transfer of sovereignty. How can members of this House, who say they want to be Democrats, approve of a system which removes the lawmaking powers on such a colossal part of our economy to a foreign jurisdiction and tell us that is a good thing? No one who has any blood of democracy in their veins can embrace such a state of vassalage, and yet that is what the protocol has brought to us. And therefore, those who are beginning to waken up to the damage, who are in retreat from rigorous implementation, need to come to the point of recognising that this protocol cannot be salvaged. It cannot be fixed. It is doomed because it transfers fundamental sovereignty from this place and from London to a foreign place with no control. Mr. Dickson can shake
Members' time is up.
But there is no control now over many of the laws made. And that
Members' time is up. Mr. Allister, thank you very much. And I call Alan Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just like the percentage of people in South Belfast that Mr. O'Toole referred to who voted to remain, I also voted to remain. But the referendum was an exercise in democracy. It was not an opt-in, opt-out referendum. It was not conducted on a street-by-street level. It was conducted as a national referendum of the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland, and people voted to leave. And as a Democrat, I accepted that decision. The protocol is a different animal. The protocol was not brought forward as a democratic process. I wasn't asked as a voter or as a resident of Northern Ireland or the United Kingdom whether I was happy with the protocol. It was imposed on us, and that is just not democratic. And I do remember in the middle of the COVID restrictions, when travel was much more restricted and regulations a lot tighter than maybe what they are today, I recall the leaders of some of the political parties in this chamber rushing down to Dublin to the Department of Foreign Affairs to get their photographs taken standing outside on the steps. And they were there as champions of the protocol. They were there demanding the full implementation of the protocol. Now they seem to have stepped back a little bit. But I tell you, the easements that are getting quoted that we've achieved in the protocol are not down to the efforts of those champions who rushed to Dublin to get their photographs taken. It has been others who have fought and showed the iniquitous nature of some of the parts of the protocol that have led to them being changed. And I have to say, Mr. Sukovic addressed a committee of this Assembly last Monday, and I picked up some words that he was reported as having used. He said that, and this was in relation to medicines, the most basic thing that people need, medicines. And he said, "We are willing to consider taking bold steps
if the UK Government demonstrate a clear and concrete commitment to implementing the protocol in full. Now, to me, that sounds like some form of blackmail, and it's certainly, to use the words of Mr Stalford earlier, about Northern Ireland being used as a political football. That's exactly what we have been getting used with. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Chambers. And I call Gordon Lyons.
Mr Speaker, I hadn't intended to speak during this matter of the day, as my party's position was very clearly set out by Mr Stalford. However, I have to say that I have been astounded by what I have heard from some of the Remainer parties, in particular Mr O'Toole, who is essentially saying to us this morning, stop harping on about the protocol, stop complaining about it. Well, I'm going to continue to complain about it, because there are constitutional issues with the protocol, there are economic issues with the protocol, and we have seen that there are social issues with the protocol as well. It's not working and it needs to go, and I'm not going to be silenced by other members of this House who say just get on with it, because this situation cannot continue. I do not think it is generous of the European Union to allow trade to continue between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. I do not think it's generous to say that in the future we may be able to work out a plan that will allow you to get your vital medicines that you may need. And we need to see real change, and we need to see real progress on this issue. And I am glad that we have not heard rigorous implementation anymore from the Alliance and from the SDLP or from Sinn Féin. I think that the penny has dropped, and they are starting to realise, and the British Government, I hope, is starting to realise, and the Irish Government and the EU, of the problems that exist with the protocol, and we need to see action in relation to that. But these, of course, as well, are the parties that have spoken so much about the Good Friday Agreement and the need to protect the Good Friday Agreement. Well, I think it's very, very clear that the protocol does not protect or support the Good Friday Agreement in any way. And I would say to people in this House, if you're serious about wanting to share power, if you're serious about seeing all communities working together and moving forward together, then you need to recognise the concern that the protocol is causing in unionist communities. But, Mr Speaker, it would be a mistake to say that this is just impacting upon the unionist community in Northern Ireland, because it's implementing on everybody that tries to do business with the rest of Great Britain, everybody that is a manufacturer that is trying to bring goods in from Great Britain. So rather than double down and rather continue with the failed protocol, it's time to find new solutions, and I hope that other parties would recognise that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and I call Rosemary Barton.
Thank you. Mr Speaker, it's ironic that once again we're here today discussing this protocol, a totally undemocratic process with little or no consideration being given for the people of Northern Ireland here when it was introduced by the European Government. Look at the problems we've had with this protocol, with our pets, and the possibilities that our pets will be vaccinated for diseases that no longer exist within the United Kingdom. What nonsense. With the importation of flowers and plants just because of soil on them from Great Britain. Again, how has the soil changed prior to December 2020? Look at the issues we have in the agricultural community with our rules and regulations regarding the importing of animals, keeping animals in Great Britain for 6 months before they can be brought into Northern Ireland, decimating parts of our agricultural economy. Look at the issues already mentioned with drugs. Mr Speaker, this protocol has got to go. It is impacting upon everybody in here in Northern Ireland, and there's no need for it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I call Andrew Muir.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and welcome back. Hopefully, I would hope that you would be welcome back to a more conciliatory tone today, but there it goes. In terms of the matter of the day before us this afternoon, I think it's important to recall what the actual statement came out on Wednesday and what it covered. It covered a mutually agreed extension of grace period on chilled meats. It also covered practical solutions on a number of issues which have previously been raised in this place, such as medicines, guide dogs, the green card, which some people didn't seem to see was a significant issue, but for me it is, and the obligation for that is waived, and also the movement of certain animals. I've heard today, and I hear in the days previous, so what? Well, so what? The reality is that the United Kingdom leaving the European Union was never going to be easy, and the impact upon Northern Ireland was always going to be particularly acute. And I hear the comments here today, but I also recall when two former Prime Ministers came to Derry, Londonderry, a number of years ago, and outlined the real serious concerns that if Brexit occurred and what the impact would be on Northern Ireland. And hey-ho, we're having the debate today in terms of those concerns now being played out. We have to focus upon solutions, not problems. Far too often in here and other places, we're constantly debating the problems. This announcement is solutions. And for those who say, get rid of the protocol, bin the protocol, that would have some credibility if it wasn't for the fact that there's no credible alternative to the protocol. Bin the protocol and you get Protocol 1.1. There's no credible alternative. We were here for years debating this issue in Westminster. The DUP had a position of influence and power which would be able to have a much better outcome in relation to this, but aided and abetted by the ERG, we ended up getting a hard Brexit and the impact coming out of this. So that's a reality, and for those who say they don't consent to this, Northern Ireland didn't consent to Brexit. The majority of people in Northern Ireland voted to remain. But we are where we are now. We have to focus upon solutions. And one of those solutions in front of us is a common veterinary agreement. And I really wish people would come together and support that, because until that happens and until all parties come together and support that and push the UK Government to deliver upon that solution, some of the outrage here, I'm sorry, does not come across as entirely credible, because solutions are out there for you in terms of actually being able to take this forward. And we have to focus on solutions, deliver for people and businesses in Northern Ireland. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The members, and that concludes this matter of the day. Next item on the agenda, matter of the day, Mr. Doug Beattie. All right. I'll give